Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you may be listening, whatever time it may be. My name is Ryan Dooley, and I am your host for Let's Talk Football. Today is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. We're going to get into what's going on in the transfer portal with some of the quarterbacks that have hopped in the portal, as well as I'm going to give my picks for tomorrow's big Thursday night football game between the Rams and Seahawks. Yeah, like I said, there are some big things going on in the transfer portal. Some big names have popped in. Today, I'm going to talk about the four quarterbacks that I think are the biggest names in there and where I have fits where they could go. There is a fifth name I'm not going to talk about today, which is Bryce Underwood from Michigan. He has not officially entered the transfer portal, although there are many reports that he is following that coaching situation very closely, and there are rumors that he very well could hop in the portal. I will not talk about him today just because there is nothing official yet. The four quarterbacks I'm going to talk about today are Brendan Sorsby, formerly quarterback for the Cincinnati Bearcats, DJ Lagway, the former quarterback for the Florida Gators, Dylan Raiola, transferring out of Nebraska, and Sam Levitt, formerly of the Arizona State Sun Devils. I'll kind of give some insight into each of them, of who they are as players, and where I could see them being good fits next year. I'm going to start with a little hometown bias, and honestly, who I believe is probably the most polished and balanced quarterback coming into the transfer portal. I think he's going to have a lot of big name schools going after him. I've already seen some reports on where he might go, and I'm going to talk about Cincinnati Bearcat man. There it is, right behind me. Of Brendan Sorsby. Announced a couple days ago he will be entering the transfer portal for his final season. Spent 2 years at Indiana, redshirting in his first year before transferring to UC to be the quarterback for the Bearcats the last 2 years. He's been very good for the Bearcats, especially this past year. He had a very nice season. As I pull up his stats here, yeah, this past year, the definition of a dual threat quarterback: 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions through the air, completing just over 61% of his passes, but also adding 580 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground. Back to back seasons of adding 9 touchdowns on the ground and being a running threat just as much as a receiving threat. Back to back years, excuse me, 3 straight years of over 100 carries for him. In his last year at Indiana, he had 286 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. So 22 touchdowns on the ground in 3 years is a significant amount of touchdowns. And from watching him every week, being a Cincinnati Bearcats fan myself, I got to see him close up and every week run the ball as much as he wanted. His legs were a major threat all season long and will be a threat of whatever team he goes to. I would say he's the most dynamic quarterback of the four I will talk about today. Like I said, I already touched on his legs, but his arm as well. Very accurate quarterback, makes very good reads, very smart quarterback, doesn't get sacked almost ever, was only sacked 9 times, or excuse me, was only sacked 7 times this past season. A big part of that was the Bearcats O-line and how good they were, but also Brendan Sorsby knows when to throw the ball away, is not scared to watch his completion percentage be lower and to get rid of a ball, which is a very veteran and good trait for a quarterback, not caring about that completion percentage and not wanting to take one of those big drive costing sacks. Yeah, he was the lifeblood of this team this year. Honestly, he without him, I'm not sure the Bearcats are even bowl eligible as they get prepared to play Navy without him in their bowl. Yeah, he's. It was kind of expected that he might transfer. Last year, there was a lot of talk that he might transfer as well. He ended up coming back for another season, and it paid off. I know he's testing his NFL draft waters and seeing what the feedback from scouts and GMs is on if he would declare for the draft instead of transferring. But as of now, he is in the transfer portal and is going to get looks from some big time schools. And there are some big time schools that need quarterbacks. One name, one school where I'm not sure I could see him going, but is a big school that needs a quarterback is LSU with new coach Lane Kiffin. He is going. He is known for going into the portal to get his quarterbacks. Jackson Dart was a transfer from USC, as well as this past year at Ole Miss. Trinidad Chambliss from an FCS school transferring into Ole Miss and having a top 10 Heisman finish under Lane Kiffin in that system. I don't see him as a fit there. I think it would work. I just think he might go bigger splash and maybe a guy that could be there for 2 years instead of just the one. I really like him as a fit in Tennessee. I believe under Josh Heupel's system, that kind of widespread offense with a lot of deep throws and screens, as well as using his legs in the running game. I think he is a perfect fit for the Volunteers. That is where I had him going, but as recent news has come out and me using a little bit of my UC knowledge, I am also aware I'm going to use the girlfriend theory here. Brendan Sorsby currently has a girlfriend who was a volleyball player at the University of Cincinnati, who has in the last week transferred to Texas Tech, who just so happens to also need a quarterback. So in the end, I looked over both Texas Tech and Tennessee. I like his fit both places. I am going to predict that Brendan Sorsby will be the Texas Tech starting quarterback next year. He's exactly what they're looking for. Obviously, Texas Tech in the college football playoff with a bye as the 4th seed. They had an incredible season, and they're looking to build on that next year. Great NIL money. That roster is going to continue to get more and more expensive the more and more they use that money. Brendan Sorsby would be a great fit for them. Obviously, he protects the football. That is the number one strength about him. And he, like I've mentioned multiple times, will use his legs the way that Texas Tech wants to use him in the run game. He stays in the Big 12, so he's familiar with the conference and some of the opponents in here. I think he is a perfect fit at Texas Tech. Like I mentioned, he's also a very good fit at Tennessee, but I will take him transferring to Texas Tech next year and being a Red Raider. So Sorsby, I believe, is going to be the top name in the class, but I believe there is another name that maybe I would value higher just based on his upside, and I think some other the big schools will take a swing on him, and that is DJ Lagway, quarterback formerly of the Florida Gators, former 5-star recruit. He has played 2 years. He will be transferring as a junior, and this is a name where I could see him going lots and lots of places, but there are some red flags with him. In 2 years at Florida, completing 62% of his passes with just over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, but 23 interceptions, including a ratio of 16 touchdowns to 14 interceptions this past year. Also gets sacked quite a bit, especially for how mobile he is. 32 sacks in 2 years, including 19 this year. The completion percentage came up. It was just under 60% last year. It is just over 63% this year. And on the ground, he is a very good athlete. Maybe he doesn't look to run as much. 71 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown this year. And 121 carries, 237 yards, and a touchdown total in his 2 years at Florida. It just seems like it wasn't working. It's nothing with Lagway as much as the system he was in, and obviously now with Billy Napier being fired, he decides to enter his name into the transfer portal, and I believe there are going to be big teams going after him. And the place that I have him going, I have already mentioned in the LSU Tigers. I think this is the perfect fit for Lane Kiffin. Maybe not fitting his style of transfer quarterback that he looks at. Many times he looks for the more polished, under the radar guy. This is big name, big upside, and big risk. But when you take the job at LSU, you are going there to take these big risks and see if you can develop him the way that many people think he can be developed. He has the highest upside of any of these quarterbacks in the portal. I think that is pretty comfortable to say. And I believe Lane Kiffin is probably the best guy that can develop him. Look at what he did with Jackson Dart transferring in from USC. Developed him into an NFL first-round pick and a guy that looks like he could be the future for the New York Giants in the NFL. You take a look at Trinidad Chambliss transferring in from an FCS school, comes in, finishes top 10 in Heisman voting, and has them as the 6th seed in the college football playoff. Obviously, these players are very talented, but Lane Kiffin likes to develop this type of quarterback. He's very good at developing these quarterbacks, and that system is very quarterback friendly. I could see a guy like DJ Lagway going in there and immediately living up to the potential that everyone saw coming out of high school and flashes of in his 2 years at Florida. The biggest thing with him has just been inconsistencies. He's been the best player on the field of certain games and then a total liability turning the ball over for Florida. If he could go to LSU and cut back on the turnovers and stop trying to play hero ball as much with some better athletes at LSU and in a very quarterback-friendly system, I could see him being a perfect fit and a star for the LSU Tigers next year. So I do have Lane Kiffin going and getting him out of the portal. Third guy I'm going to talk about here, I believe, is the definite third best quarterback in this. Another guy, former 5-star, transferring out of a school looking for a big-time opportunity. I am talking about Dylan Raiola, quarterback formerly of the Nebraska Cornhuskers and in Matt Rule's system up there in Nebraska. This is a different type of quarterback here. This is a guy that is not going to use his legs. We've talked about two guys that can use their legs, obviously with Sorsby being a pure dual threat quarterback, Lagway being more of an extender with his legs and can use them when he needs. Dylan Raiola is a pocket passer through and through. In 2 years, he has been sacked quite a bit, 27 times both years. He is not very mobile. If there's pressure on him, he is most likely to go down. He is a big guy, which plays into his advantages, and he is more mobile maybe than this looks, but you are not going to play him in an offense where you are going to run the ball a lot. Um, he it's just not his play style. However, he is a highly accurate, strong arm quarterback. This past year, completing over 72% of his throws for 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions before getting hurt for Nebraska. Would have been nice to see a full season out of him, but the big thing is he does protect the football. Last year struggled with interceptions quite a bit with only 13 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. This year cut the interceptions in half while also adding 5 more touchdowns in his shortened time. He took tremendous strides this year and really looked like coming into the 5-star hype that he had coming out of high school. Was originally committed to Georgia before flipping his commitment to Nebraska on signing day. Yeah, there was a lot of teams that I could talk about here with him. Obviously, Indiana is going to need a quarterback next year with Fernando Mendoza leaving. You could see him maybe looking at something like Georgia, if with no Gunnar Stockton down there. Miami is another place that I could see him going. Oregon and the Ducks are another place where they like to go get transfer quarterbacks. And the more and more I look at this, the less I could figure out kind of where I wanted him to go. Um, I was very surprised that he jumped in the portal. I thought he was going to stay in Nebraska. He seemed to like that system, and him and Matt Rule had a good connection there. But I am going to keep him in the Big Ten with a team that is going to have their quarterback, I believe, drafted very, very highly in the draft. And no, I am not talking about the Indiana Hoosiers. I am talking about the Ducks up in Eugene, Oregon. Dan Lanning loves his transfer portal quarterbacks. It kind of came down to them and Miami for me. These are two teams that really, really like going into the transfer portal to get a quarterback. Miami is very enticing. I could definitely see him going down there with Mario Cristobal, loving to go get transfers. He got Carson Beck this past year and Cam Ward the year before. Two guys that were pretty highly ranked, or excuse me, two guys who had good seasons. Cam Ward obviously not being highly ranked, but Carson Beck having a good season, not doing as well in his final year, then transferring down there and kind of reviving what we thought he was. Cam Ward going down there and flourishing into the number 1 overall pick just 2 years ago. I could definitely see that being a fit for Dylan Raiola, but I like him staying in the Big Ten and going to Oregon under Dan Lanning. The biggest thing with him, I know Dan Lanning might like a little more mobile of a quarterback. With Dante Moore able to use his legs, Bo Nix obviously was a very good athlete, and Dylan Gabriel was able to use his legs when needed. I think Dylan Raiola fits there just because he is a high completion guy. You look at someone like Bo Nix, like Dylan Gabriel, these guys, they worked in that system because they were very accurate with the football. And I believe Dylan Raiola is that same kind of build. And I think Dan Lanning will like that. Obviously, having seen him play at Nebraska in the Big Ten, I will have him staying in the Big Ten and transferring to go be the starting quarterback for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. The last guy I'm going to talk about here is I think maybe the name that will go under the radar and I think could end up being one of the better quarterback transfers in this class. And I'm going to go ahead and go to Arizona State and talk about Sam Leavitt. This is a guy that last year, I think if he would have jumped in the portal, would have had every big team coming after him. Decides to go back to Arizona State and did not have the year he was hoping. That team was kind of below expectations of where they thought they would be coming off of the college football playoff last year, and almost beating Texas in that game. It ended up taking them into overtime and losing. Goes back to Arizona State this year under the Kenny Dillingham system and does not have the year that he was wanting. We'll talk about we'll talk about 2024 a lot here. just under 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Another guy that can use his legs very well. He added 443 more yards and 5 touchdowns. This year, less impressive. He played less. He did have an injury. Only 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, adding another 5 on the ground still this year. So he is also a very mobile quarterback. This is a guy that I could see fitting in at Oregon. If Dylan Raiola does choose to transfer somewhere else, I could see Dan Lanning going after him. My issue with Sam Leavitt is his completion percentage, just over 60%, and this year, right around 61% in his 2 years at Arizona State. He did start at Michigan State as a freshman, was able to redshirt there and transfer to Arizona State. And just the past 2 years at Arizona State, kind of that lower 60s, like I said, 61% completion. That might be a turn off for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. He likes guys who complete a lot of their passes in that offense. Now, that offense also is very quarterback friendly with completion percentage, so he could take a guy like Sam Leavitt and make him a higher completion percentage guy, especially since Sam Leavitt does a good job of not turning the ball over. Just 9 interceptions in the last 2 years, 11 total in his career. I could definitely see the Ducks being in on him if they do not get Raiola. But in my model, I do have them getting Raiola. So I will take Sam Leavitt to transfer to another big-time Big Ten team who likes transfer quarterbacks and is also going to lose their quarterback high in the draft. I am talking about Curt Cignetti's Indiana Hoosiers. This is a guy that I believe could fit very well into that Fernando Mendoza type of style in that offense, the RPO style, making good decisions with the football and also more mobile than Fernando Mendoza is, so able to use his legs a little more. I believe this is a very enticing transfer portal quarterback for Curt Cignetti, a guy with a lot of experience, just like Mendoza has, and he will be able to come fill the void that Mendoza will be leaving behind as he leaves for the NFL. Those are the 4 quarterbacks I'm going to talk about in this episode. I believe those are the 4 big-time quarterbacks that are going to end up at some of these big-time schools. There are some other teams that need quarterback. I mentioned Tennessee, but Joey Aguiar might be able to come back, and also Miami. 2 schools that you could definitely see going to get quarterbacks, and these guys could transfer to as well. But this is where I have these 4 going currently. Moving on a little bit, I did mention this is going to be a shorter episode. That's all I'm going to talk about transfer portal wise. I do want to jump into this massive game happening tomorrow night between the Rams and the Seahawks, a battle in the NFC West and a battle for the potential number 1 seed in the NFC West. This is the second time they have played this year. They played in Week 12 in LA with the Rams winning 21-19 in that game. Like I mentioned, the first meeting back in Week 12. That meeting was very, very strange. It was a strange game. Sam Darnold threw 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and still it came down to a last-second 61-yard field goal miss by Jason Myers as time expired for the Rams to be able to hold on to their win. The Rams coming off a big game last week. Matthew Stafford had 368 yards and 2 passing touchdowns against the Lions in their 41-34 win. And the Rams own the top seed in the NFC. But the big story coming out of this is Davante Adams, star receiver for the Rams, is not expected to play in this game. So the eyes will be turned to Puka Nacua and Devin Witherspoon out on the outside as they will be going at each other all night long. That, I believe, is the matchup to watch for. If Puka is able to win that matchup, I believe the Rams are able to come out with a win in Seattle. If Devin Witherspoon is able to lock him up all night, the Rams now become in trouble without Davante Adams as that second option. This is going to be a great game. Like I mentioned, it has big ties to the NFC West and to the top seed in the NFC. I believe if the Rams are able to win this, they pretty much lock up the NFC West, and they will be in the driver's seat fully for the top seed in the NFC. The Seahawks will be able to make a lot of noise here with a win, and it is very, very tough to go into Seattle and win. That is one of the loudest stadiums. It is going to be rocking every time the Rams go there, it seems to be. Matthew Stafford in pursuit for his first MVP. Him and Drake May, it looks like it will come down to those two. Drake May with a big game last week, but kind of lost it at the end against the Bills, and they blew that big halftime lead to slip in their division a little bit. They still own their top seed in that, or the top seeded from their division, but now only one game ahead of the Bills. So Stafford has a chance to go put an exclamation mark on his MVP race so far this season. But like I mentioned, it is a very, very tough place to play. Seattle is playing very well. They kind of did not have a great game last week against the Colts, and Phillip Rivers just, I don't know if it was a trap game or what it was, or if they just were not prepared. That offense did not look good, although Jackson Smith-Njigba has been the best receiver in the league this year. He is looks like he's en route to possibly win Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL. This is a clash of the Titans this year. Both these teams are going to make the playoffs. Both these teams are going to be very dangerous in the playoffs. And honestly, I went back and forth on this pick all week long, like looking at it these past couple days. I've mentioned over and over, it is a tough place to go win on the road. That 12th man fan in Seattle is so hard to go win in. But if there's any guy that's going to do it, it's going to be Matthew Stafford and this Rams team. I believe the Rams do go into Seattle tomorrow night and get the big win that they are looking for despite Devontae Adams being out. I will take the Rams in this game to win 26-23 as this game goes back and forth all night long. Yeah, I mentioned it was going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. I've kind of given a lot of content and information out these last couple days all over the channel. So if you've missed any of that and you want to see more, make sure to click around to some of those videos. There's a good one with Justin talking about more things with MLB free agency and kind of all around sports. Or if you missed some of the other episodes, make sure to go back in the playlist and look at those. But as of right now, that is all I have for you today. From wherever you're watching, whatever time it may be, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching this episode of Let's Talk Football. If you enjoyed what you heard today, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, comment down below with what you would like to see me talk about next. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more just like it, click on the video right now to see my last episode, and let's talk more football.